we're here with some of the younger first fans for The Last Airbender, and we'll start with the youngest. What do you think?
It sucks.
Avatar: The Last Airbender is a series that doesn't need much introduction. After all, I'm pretty sure that almost everyone in the Western Hemisphere has seen the show twice. So when everyone heard that this critically acclaimed and beloved series was getting a live-action adaptation, we all groaned. You'd think this is good news though, right? I mean, it's more Avatar content, man, come on. The thing is, live-action adaptations have a pretty shaky reputation. I'm not naming any names, but Dragon Ball Evolution, Death Note, the other Avatar live-action that we're not talking about in this video. As of late though, this expectation of ass has begun to shift thanks to the likes of One Piece and Yu Yu Hakusho. These two series took the material they were given seriously, and it's evident how much the cast, crew, directors, and writers all cared about these properties, so it's no wonder they came out as good as they did. So, back to my little story. When the announcement for the series came out, everyone was ready to light the torches and grab some pitchforks. But then, after everyone had written it off as another bland, shitty cash grab, a rumor started floating around. Rumor had it that some of the original crew was on board for the series, specifically the co-creators. Oh? So for months and months we waited, and Netflix, or sometimes one of the original creators, would tweet out some random behind-the-scenes fact or photo and we'd all be super amped. But when the script needed them most, they vanished. This was already bad, but when it came out that they left because they couldn't control the creative direction of the series, the reception of the season immediately soured. After they left, we kept getting worse and worse news about the series. Sokka wasn't going to be sexist, and therefore lost his arc and original connection with Suki. Katara wasn't going to be as motherly, therefore removing a key character trait and a point of connection for her and Sokka. And it wasn't just the main characters either. In one of the last trailers that came out before the show did, we saw that Azula's fire wasn't blue?
What?
Weirdly enough, that was my last straw, and that's why I'm making this video now. To see that the showrunners cared so little for something as important to a character as Azula's fire, it just wasn't looking good. More than anything, I was nervous. I wasn't nervous about the show looking good. I wasn't nervous about the show being well edited. Well, maybe I was a little. What I was really nervous about is this show being lazy. When you take a series as beloved as this and give it a live action adaptation, it's going to have eyes on it. And eyes mean money. So I wanted to know, was this adaptation just another lazy cash grab this entire time? Or did it have potential and passion behind it only to get screwed over in the end? Well, I have some notes. More than anything, I guess I'm just conflicted about this series. Because weirdly enough, it isn't bad. There is a but to that statement coming up soon. The show is just fine. Everything from the camera work to the costuming is great, except Zuko's face paint scar, but you know, you can't win them all. The effects for bending look pretty fantastic throughout the show, and the spirit world monsters like the owl and co, insane. But there's something weird going on with these environments. The wide shots look pretty great, but whenever you're watching a scene, the background seems blurry. Not out of focus, but like they added an artificial blur. Like, watch this. A weird amount of the series looks like this, and I can't really place my finger on why. My assumption is that it's because they're trying to make it a bit less obvious that they're on a green screen, but I can't realistically confirm that. It's not the end of the world, but just keep an eye out for it when footage is on screen. Also, before I forget to mention it, the performances are pretty good, especially for the child actors. I'm gonna clarify for the man children in the audience, hang on. These are child actors. Please do not harass these children for not doing a perfect job, especially when most, if not all of the issues with the show lie with the direction or with the script. On a much more positive note, the show adds a whole lot to Zuko and Iroh's, well, really everything. In fact, they're given several moments that I would have liked to have seen in the original series, but more on those later. I know what you're here for. What did they fuck up? A whole lot. On its own, the show is alright. The thing is though, I'm willing to bet that everyone who watched it or is watching this video has seen the original Avatar. So as an Avatar fan, let me tell you, the show isn't bad, it's just stupid and very reductive. I'm not 100% certain this video is going to make complete sense, as in general, the show kind of left me stumped. The main thing is that the show kind of gets worse and worse the more you think about it. I've been putting off making this video so I can have a complete opinion on it, but I'm cutting myself off. Now with any adaptation, there are going to be differences between the original and the new one. I don't think anyone was actually expecting a one-to-one Avatar remake, but the things they chose to add, remove, and expand on are so weird that I don't think I can talk about it linearly. I know everyone's here to watch me shit on the show, so let's shit on the show. Aang is fine, mostly. Aang is one of the characters who made it out of the show like alright, but alright in this is definitely skewed towards bad. First things first, Aang can just fly. Just casually, in case you're unaware, he in fact can't do that. Oh, and it's bad in the first episode. He's flying here, and here he's really flying, and then he doesn't do it again for the rest of the series. Remember how I said the show was stupid? There's a lot of stuff like that in here. Things that are literally just like incorrect. But if we're gonna talk about Aang, we gotta talk about the first episode, which... Oh, okay, the first episode. Episode 1, titled Aang, by the way, is definitely the worst of the 8, and it isn't even close. Instead of starting with Katara and Sokka finding Aang, we spend the first 20 minutes of the episodes 100 years in the past. Now, this gives us the opportunity to have some neat characterization for Aang, but unfortunately, it ends up taking away from him. For those of you who haven't seen it, in Avatar, when Aang leaves the Southern Air Temple, it's a decision to abandon his responsibilities. Feeling the burden placed on him by the elder monks, and really the world, to learn the 4 elements and keep everything in balance was too much for this 12-year-old, so he ran away and ended up frozen in the iceberg. This is a super big character choice, and it sets up the theme of responsibility really well. Do you want to know what this series does instead?
You're right. Just needs to go up where things always make more sense. At least for now.
He goes to clear his head.
I am under the water. Please help me.
So we're literally a third of the first episode in, and Aang has already been reduced from a scared child who vanished when the world needed him most, to a guy who got frozen in time when he went for a late night drive. Sure thing, man. Well, I guess this could have still worked. Literally every adult character harps on Aang for abandoning the world when he literally didn't. As an example, later in the season, we do an episode with King Boomy, who's basically just a jaded asshole adult in this, so not Boomy. Here, he's hammering home the idea that the Avatar has to make impossible decisions, and how the current state of the world is a result of Aang leaving. Aang, tell this nigga it isn't your fault? I know, he's 12. He probably doesn't have the emotional intelligence to understand that this isn't his fault. To some degree, I could even see how Boomy could end up like this and be angry at Aang because of it. But you know what doesn't make sense? Kyoshi and the other avatars also yell at Aang for abandoning his responsibilities at every possible chance. You were there! You should know that he didn't do this by choice. You were literally piloting him when he did this! These changes take the idea of Aang abandoning his responsibilities and genuinely neuters it. For a point of comparison, imagine the difference between your dad leaving to get milk and your dad driving to the gym and getting caught by a hurricane on the way home. You see how one is a very real abandonment of your responsibilities and duties, and the other is entirely out of their hands? Also, Aang literally doesn't waterbend this entire season. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, Book 1, Water, Aang, the Avatar, doesn't bend water? Have you seen the show? Speaking of things that Aang as a character will and won't do, killing people? Here's Aang picking up several ships and throwing them at other manned vessels. To be fair, Aang is being a conduit for the ocean spirit at this moment, but also, they wouldn't be in this situation at all if Aang didn't move the moon spirit at a glacial pace so Zhao could stab it. So I'm still gonna pin the blame for the ocean spirit incident on him. Shit, dude, speaking of waterbending, Katara feels like a shell of her former self to me. Considering the fact that one of her main things is teaching Aang waterbending, when they cut all of that from the show, she lost a whole lot. But also, they took away her confidence of all things. Katara is a super nice character, yes, but she almost seems shy to me in this. I'm not saying she needs to be yelling at Sokka in every scene, but come on, dude, she's damn near docile. Katara's can-do attitude and desire to grow as a waterbender is what makes her an interesting character, and we get so little of that here that it's frustrating. This gets really noticeable near the end of the season, when we're in the Northern Water Tribe and Katara is trying to prove that women can fight too. After a season of not training Aang, and also generally being ass at waterbending, she challenges Pakku and does pretty well. This is not the same Katara from the rest of the show. Her ass is not doing this shit. Be honest. Later during the battle, people start calling her Master Katara and are asking what they can do to help. But I don't give a shit because she didn't earn that title of Master. What did she teach Aang? That waterbending looks hard? What did she teach the others? Not to be sexist? Honestly, I doubt it. Sokka... I wonder what you guys said in your head during that pause. Sokka is so mediocre, and that's a fucking tragedy, ain't it? The show did do one thing really well though, and that's finding the actor with the most Sokka-shaped head possible. Look at this kid, that is Sokka. Sokka lost a lot, but he also did get some good moments here and there too. First things first, he isn't sexist. Ooh. I know, I was upset too. The main concern for me when I heard about this is that Sokka wouldn't be able to learn anything from Suki. So what does she teach him? She gets onto him because she thinks that he needs to protect his people, and that it's fucked up that he left. Slight issue though, we already saw him learn the counter to this way of thinking earlier. He doesn't want to leave the Southern Water Tribe at the beginning of the show, but he does it anyway because he needs to save the world to save his people. His responsibility of looking out for the Avatar trumps his responsibility to stay in the village. But then, Suki kind of preaches to the opposite to him. They actually make a joke about this, which pisses me off because they kind of have him learn the same lesson a second time. There's a shot they did this so Suki could learn a lesson from Sokka instead, but I think that makes her a lot less interesting as a character. If that were the case, what would they make Sokka teach Suki anyway? Sokka's entire thing on Kyoshi Island is learning from the warriors, so they literally removed all of the payoff and inverted the setup for what? To watch him do the same thing twice? On a much more positive note, they moved Sai and his kid to Omashu for the adaptation, and I think that was a really good move. And just about all of Sokka's scenes with him are really great. I love that we see the first time that Sokka's really presented with an option other than being a warrior. However, I don't like that they made his dad not believe in him. How dare you portray Hakoda as anything other than a saint, you monsters. I'm gonna talk about a bunch of little things that irritated me, because I want to save Zuko and Iroh for last so I can leave on a positive note. That being said, there are a ton of little things that irritated me. The episode with all the spirit world stuff has me pretty conflicted. Well, conflicted might not be the right word. More like I enjoyed one thing it did, and the rest of it really fucking frustrates me. I like that Aang gets to see Gyatso again. Full disclosure, I wrote in my notes Milk Gyatso, and like my snap reaction, like my snap thought was Gyat. So I really might be cooked. As much as I like that though, I didn't really like much else. I think it was a good idea to mix all the spirit world stuff with the visions in the swamp, but then we don't see Toph or the winged boar. One of the main points of the swamp episode was to introduce the Beifong family crest and Toph in general so that Aang can find his earthbending teacher. I guess because Katara hasn't trained him for shit, we aren't getting Toph until book 3 Fire or something. Speaking of the visions, Sokka sees Yue. Now if you don't know, Princess Yue is the girl that is the fish that is the moon. I should probably explain that a bit. I promise it makes sense. Yue was born with this sort of vague illness, so her family asked the moon spirit to breathe life into her, so now they're bound together. So Yue's this fish, and this fish is the moon. So Yue is the girl that is the fish that is the moon. So when Sokka sees Yue in the forest, she's represented by a 3-tailed fox. So technically, this fox is the girl that is the fish that is the moon. Alright, dude. The shrines of the avatars being important is introduced in a really lame way. I kinda can't describe it to be more cringe or lazy than it already is, so I'm just gonna play you the clip.
You're making a mistake. He's the Avatar.
Ridiculous. There would have been signs if he was the Avatar.
I think that might be a sign.
While I'm talking about the shrines, I should probably talk about the other avatars. Roku is easily the best one. He's very wise and stoic, and a beacon of pure philosophical integrity.
Forgive me! I couldn't resist.
I kid! He's a funny guy! He's nice. I'm gonna say that again. He's nice. In a series where everyone's so gruff and miserable all the time, I like that Roku is a nice, funny guy despite how much authority he had. Kyoshi, however, pissed me the fuck off just about every time she spoke in this show. What's crazy is that normally I'm a Kyoshi Glazer, but I just did not like her in this. Remember how earlier I said that people were blaming Aang for something he literally didn't do? I'll give you 3 guesses as to who's the front of the campaign. I don't remember much else about her other than that she's weirdly tall, but she also isn't proportioned out in that same way, so it looks like she's standing on another platform or like on stilts when she's in scenes. Plus she flies like Iron Man, and I don't think anyone really cares about Karuk. Aw man, the main characters in the supporting cast totally suck. Wouldn't it be terrible if the villains were also lame? Zhao isn't intimidating. Ozai doesn't do anything for me. We'll come back to Zuko and Iroh. And lastly, Azula and Azula Inc. are a bit of a mess. Why is her fire not blue? You wanna know why I think Azula, Ozai, and Zuko are such good villains? In season 1, we get used to the Zuko fella chasing around the team. He's a threat to be sure, but it's not so bad that we can't crack jokes every now and again. Zuko feels more like another main character that's just on the opposite side of the conflict, and that feeling is most certainly intentional. Iroh is also one of the main reasons for this, because he's literally trying to get Zuko to see the light for the entire show. So when season 2 comes along, we get Azula, who's on a whole other level from Zuko. For one, her fire's blue, which is pretty cool, but more importantly, it immediately signifies to the audience that she's different. Plus, Azula is fucking scary, dude. there just isn't any room to play around. So in season 3, Ozai comes more into the focus as the antagonist, Zuko transitions to being good, and Azula is losing her shit. That's the strength in having so many villains. Because they take turns operating as the focal villain, we can see just how distinct they are from one another. Zuko is a secret good guy, Azula is scary as fuck, but she's really tragic when you think about it, and Ozai is fucking insane. So when we come to this show and Azula gets a little bit of an arc, I'm not disappointed, but it feels like they didn't get what made her so scary when she was compared to Zuko in the first place. Azula is a static character until the very end of the show, and that's because she's literally going insane. Because of how confident she is typically, when she finally snaps and we see the shattering of that status quo, it feels so much more satisfying and heartbreaking. So as neat as it is to see, I kinda don't want to see her come into her own like this. So, the positives. There are more than I thought. Not a ton. Not really besides Zuko and Iroh, but we'll get there in a second. The bending. Hot damn did the bending look great in this show. The effects looked great around the board, and the landscapes also looked pretty incredible when they were just establishing shots. Also, the performances from the adult actors, pretty solid around the board. I can't really remember anyone doing a bad job. Zuko and Iroh definitely get the most out of the series, and if I had to guess, this is the stuff the original writers had the most influence over. Zuko is great. I wish his scar looked a little better, but other than that, he looks like Zuko. But the scenes concerning his and Iroh's past are the best moments in the show, specifically the war meeting, the Agni Kai, and the funeral scene. The war meeting is fantastic. Everything from the framing to the acting to the set is top notch for me here. Someone proposes the idea of sacrificing a battalion of soldiers, and when Zuko rightfully calls out that they're being inhumane, Ozai doesn't tolerate his insubordination. Seeing Zuko realize that his father doesn't really care about his soldiers and his people in general is heartbreaking, but it sucks extra hard because we know what happens next. The Agni Kai is also heartbreaking. Funnily enough, it's a much more private affair than in the original. Not really a complaint though, because seeing Dr. Han slowly burn his son's eye out is fucking gut-wrenching. That shit does not need to be public. We also get the brilliant idea of Zuko's crew that he got banished with being the battalion he spoke up for in the war meeting. This is so fucking good, and it really beautifully explains why some of these soldiers stick with Zuko, even if he can be a little erratic at times. Before we talk about the funeral scene, I want to mention something with Iroh. During the Blue Spirit episodes, he's captured. Hold it! My bad. This shit does not happen during the Blue Spirit episodes. This happens in episode 4, and in these scenes, he's being transported to another prison. However, the guards transporting him are from Ba Sing Se. For anyone who's unaware, in canon, Iroh used to be a war criminal, like for real, and he led a legendary 600-day siege on the wall of Ba Sing Se. Ultimately, it failed, but it wasn't an easy win for the Earthbenders. Almost every Earthbender who's transporting him knew someone who was killed in that siege, and they give it to Iroh. Throughout this entire trip, they're abusing him out of grief, and I can't say I really blame them. This is one of the incredible strengths of Avatar's writing, and it's hard to imagine that anyone other than the original creators could have written this. This plotline is probably the second closest the series gets to recreating the incredible emotional intelligence of the original series, but it does get beat out by the funeral scene. For anyone who hasn't seen the original series, Iroh has a son named Liu Ten who died during the war. Everyone who passes him compliments him on the honorable man his son was. Except Zuko. Zuko compliments him, and then he walks away, and then he comes back and sits with Iroh, which is a really beautiful moment for him. This one scene shows Zuko's desire for his father's approval, giving the correct response of, "Oh, your son was an honorable man, he will be missed," and later realizing that that isn't what he wants. He wants to give Iroh the emotional support he needs, the help he deserves. It really is just a beautiful little scene, and I'm so glad that they included it. Whether we like it or not, the series was just greenlit for 2 more seasons, and I'm sort of cautiously optimistic / morbidly curious about it. Objection! I'm a little less cautiously optimistic because there's a rumor floating around that Toph isn't gonna be blind, and that's fucking nuts. Hold it! Nope, that was a parody account. I'm still gonna leave this bit in because I think it goes to show that this wouldn't be too outlandish to believe, and that's probably the scariest way I could describe this show. I hope that this series will get better as it continues. If I'm placing my bets now, season 2 is probably gonna be much better than season 1, and season 3 is probably gonna be buns. That's just a hunch though. A strong one, but it's just a hunch. Before I end the video, there's a few things I wanna say. First things first, 8,000 subscribers? Holy shit! We were at 5,000 last week. I don't have words that can really adequately describe how blessed I am to find myself surrounded by this community. You guys are absolutely incredible. I'm still working on the video celebrating 5,000 subscribers, but I wanna know what you guys wanna do for 10,000. I came up with the last one. I'm leaving this one up to you guys. But I do wanna do something, so put your suggestions in the comments below. Also, in other news, the 7 Deadly Sins video hit 200,000 views. What in the fuck? You guys are insane. Imagine taking everything I said about 8,000 subscribers and multiplying it by 25. It's so cool to know that you guys are enjoying that video, and I'm so glad it was worth the wait. If you like this video and want to join the other cool ass people who like my content, you should totally subscribe. But with all that being said, I'm Knightley. You've been absolutely incredible. I'll see you relatively soon. Peace.